All right, members, thank you so much for your kind attendance today. I've been doing a bunch of work to put on this meeting and thought that it was critical that we take the opportunity to hear from some of the companies that provide voting software and equipment. Mr. John Polis from Dominion Voting Systems was kind enough to agree to come in. The other two companies that have been serving Michigan did not agree to come in at this point. And perhaps that will change in the future, but at this point, they were unwilling. Members, it's my intention today that, or my expectation really, that Mr. Polis and your questions will probably take us longer than an hour. And so at 1 hour or approximately there, we'll take a 15-minute break for everybody to stretch their legs and catch their breath and regroup after that. And if it ends up taking a little longer, then that will build in another break so that everybody can take those necessary times to clear your head. So at this point, I think we're ready to hear from Mr. Polis. John, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And with you, you have Mr. Brower, who I assume is your attorney?
Our company's attorney, yes, that's correct.
Very good.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Brower. Thank you. John, at this time, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you very much. Mr. Polis, please go ahead with your opening statement.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chair McBroom and distinguished members of the committee. I appreciate the chance to be here today. My name is John Polis, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of Dominion Voting Systems. Dominion is a U.S. company headquartered in Denver, Colorado. I founded my company in Canada more than 18 years ago. By 2010, our business had grown in the United States, and we moved our headquarters to Denver, Colorado, and voluntarily worked with the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States to ensure they knew who I was. By 2018, the majority of our business, our customers, and employees were in the United States, and I sold the company to U.S. investors. This has all been publicly disclosed to Congress in sworn affidavits. Dominion proudly provides voting systems and services to jurisdictions across 28 states and Puerto Rico. I agree with the importance of the issues being raised today by the chair and ranking member regarding election integrity. At Dominion, we take great pride in the limited role we play in elections, and we want to assure voters that they can have confidence in the accuracy and reliability of their voting systems. We go to work every day cognizant of this important responsibility. Unfortunately, Dominion has recently been thrust into the national spotlight as part of a dangerous and reckless disinformation campaign aimed at sowing doubt and confusion over the 2020 presidential election. A lot of things have been said about Dominion systems, and I'm going to address as many of them as I can, as well as answer your specific questions. But the most important thing to understand about Dominion is this: we do not run elections. Our role is limited to providing a local election offices with the machines they need to run elections. After election officials have determined who is eligible to vote, we provide the machinery for voters to mark their ballot and for election officials to accurately tally those ballots. Election officials report those tallies publicly and store the original paper ballots securely. Those ballots are preserved so that election officials can double check from the tallies in our machines at any time. Again, all the tabulator does is count the votes from the paper ballots that have been created and securely cast by the voters. The number reported by the machine can always be compared to a hand count of those original paper ballots. People can speculate about votes being switched or secret algorithms or glitches, but if any of that were true, the paper ballots wouldn't match the machine count. We are very serious about providing our customers, state and local governments, machines that accurately count ballots, and at the end of the day, the counts from our machines match the physical ballots that are stored. Those people making baseless claims surely know that they are lies, but many honest Americans see them proliferated on social media and they believe them. These lies have consequences. Death threats have been leveled against state and local officials, my company's employees, and even against my family. The largest threat, however, has been on the assault on the confidence in America's democratic process. It is critical to set the record straight today on several of the most persistent lies. First, there were no switched or deleted votes involving Dominion machines. All 2020 election audits and recounts conducted thus far of Dominion technology have validated the accuracy and reliability of the results. There are no algorithm that enabled fractional voting. The Election Assistance Commission, a bipartisan federal agency, provides for the accreditation of independent, non-federal laboratories that are evaluated and recommended by the National Institute of Standards and Technology to test and qualify voting systems pursuant to HAVA Section 231, subsection B1. Among other things, these test labs perform complete source code reviews on every federally certified tabulation system. States replicate this process for their own certifications. Numerous election security experts from both sides of the aisle, including the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, and secretaries of state from across the country and from both parties, have affirmed that there are no evidence and voting machines were not corrupted to alter this election. Specifically, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency stated, quote, "There is no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised." Our company works with all U.S. political parties, and our customer base and government outreach practices support this nonpartisan approach. In fact, we submit extensive company disclosures to federal and state authorities as terms of product testing, system certification, and ownership information. Dominion is a private American company that provides voting systems in 28 states, regardless on whether they are blue or red states. Dominion voting systems did not now, nor has it ever, used SolarWinds Orion platform, which was the subject of the DHS emergency directive dated December 13, 2020. Dominion is not and has never been a front for communists. It has no ties to Hugo Chavez, the late dictator of Venezuela. We have never been involved in Venezuelan elections. Its machines have never been used in Venezuela. The company also does not have any ties to China whatsoever, including no ties, including investment or source code transfer. There are no ownership ties to any political parties, nor to foreign governments. Dominion has no ties to the Pelosi family, Feinstein family, Clinton family, or George Soros. Additionally, Dominion does not have any servers in Germany or Spain. No votes are sent overseas. Let me be clear. Ballots aren't sent anywhere. Not overseas, not over state lines, and not even over county lines. All votes are counted by local, bipartisan U.S. election officials in the United States. The U.S. Army has debunked claims of secret military raids overseas. Additionally, voting systems are, by design, meant to be used as closed systems that are not networked, meaning they are not connected to the internet. It is technologically impossible to see votes being counted in real time or to flip them. The comments about our company being started in Venezuela with Cuban money with the intent to steal elections are beyond bizarre and are complete lies. My company started in my basement, which happened to be in Toronto, and our only intention was to help blind people vote on paper ballots. Our very first public demonstration was in 2003 for a city on the other side of the Ambassador Bridge, and my partner and I made a weekend of it and watched the Lion game. Both turned into disappointing losses. No Cuba, no China, no Venezuela. Dominion does not have any ties to Smartmatic. Dominion and Smartmatic are two separate companies. We do not use or license Smartmatic software. The extent of our relationship is this. In 2009, Smartmatic licensed the use of a Dominion voting machine for use in the Philippines. That agreement is long over, and they no longer have the ability to use any of our intellectual property, and we certainly do not use any of their intellectual property or source code. The other event about our history that many are wrongfully conflating as proof of a relationship between Dominion and Smartmatic involves the assets that Dominion purchased from Sequoia Voting Systems in 2010. Let me be clear on this. We didn't purchase anything from Smartmatic. Sequoia's voting history went back over 100 years in various different names and had dozens of different owners through those years, including, for a brief time, Smartmatic, who I believe owned Sequoia between 2005 and 2007. When they fully divested in 2007, it is my understanding that they documented to CFIUS that the fact that they had no ongoing control in Sequoia. At no point did we at Dominion acquire Smartmatic source code or IP, nor do any of our customers use any of their intellectual property in our systems. I will not be commenting today on employees, whether full-time, part-time, or single-day contractors, or past employees. And that is simply due to safety concerns. You can ask me what you'd like about what we do or about myself, but not our employees. Dominion employees are facing harassment and threats against personal safety due to the false allegations of recent weeks. We are working around the clock to address issues with law enforcement and take every measure we can to ensure the safety of our employees. But I will say this. No Dominion employee has given me any reason to suspect that they have or would do anything to try to alter an election outcome. But what's even more important for you to know is that it would not be possible for them to do so. These falsehoods I've just listed are only a sampling of the most egregious lies. The disinformation campaign being waged against Dominion defies facts or logic. To date, no one has produced credible evidence of vote fraud or vote switching on Dominion systems because these things simply have not occurred. I would now like to explain further Dominion's roles in election. It is important to know that Dominion is never able to affect the outcome of an election. Dominion does not handle voter registration, poll books, or signature verification. We don't supply software or equipment for these services. We don't provide vote-by-mail services, and we don't control or secure voters' paper ballots. We have no role in verifying the eligibility of voters. These are the jobs of bipartisan poll workers and local election officials. Long before Election Day, before we sell our equipment, our voting systems undergo an accreditation process run by the EAC. The process involves compliance with all voluntary voter system guidelines, including standards for secure software design, such as software independence. Dominion systems must be tested by an independent, federally accredited laboratory, and Dominion must disclose its ownership, system source code, reviews, and all component and hardware sourcing information to the EAC. In addition to federal certification, Dominion submits to additional rounds of testing and disclosures in order to get certified in the 28 states in which we operate. Once we sell our equipment to local officials, the machines are under their control. In many circumstances, source code is delivered by hand by state certification officials. Officials keep rigorous chain of custody logs. This is how election officials ensure that equipment is not tampered with. What's more, our systems require a paper ballot that is always in the custody of the local election officials. While we do ensure trained technicians are available on election day, should local election officials need support resolving issues, at no point are local election officials not in control of voting machines. If any Michigander is looking for confidence in the vote counts, beyond looking to the chain of custody and the certification checks and balances, they can always look to the hand count audits and recounts. Now let me talk about Michigan specifically. Michigan law requires voting systems to be approved by the Michigan Board of State Canvassers and certified by an independent testing authority. Tabulation systems, including Dominion's, must pass a rigorous testing and certification process to meet the state's robust standards before they can be used. Ahead of the election, local officials conduct logic and accuracy testing with bipartisan observers present, ensuring tabulation equipment and the specific election data files perform properly and accurately. The precinct voting process administered by local election officials varies from state to state and can vary from county to county. I would like to provide a general outline of how the process works. After testing and sealing vote tabulators, vote units are delivered to the polling location. Election morning, bipartisan poll officials perform the following tasks. They unlock and unseal the ballot box that sits beneath the tabulator to verify there are no paper ballots in the ballot box. Poll officials then seal that ballot box. Poll officials verify the physical seals on the tabulators and the BMDs against the list provided by the jurisdiction's election administrators. Tabulators and BMDs are then powered on. Using an encrypted security key and password, the poll officials electronically open the polls. A zero-proof report is printed, often with multiple copies, for posting at the location and to hand out for bipartisan poll watchers. This confirms that no ballots have been cast on the units. Throughout the day after voting begins, voters check in with poll officials in order to verify their registration on an electronic or paper poll book. This process does not involve any Dominion system. Voters make their choices on their ballot, either through hand marking or via an electronic BMD device, which simply generates a voter-made paper ballot. Voters then review their paper ballots and carefully look at their choices and insert those paper ballots into the tabulator, which sits atop the physically secured and sealed ballot box. At the close of voting, poll officials perform the following task. Using an encrypted security key and password, poll officials electronically close the polls. A results tape is printed with multiple copies for posting at the polling location and to hand out to poll watchers. This confirms the turnout and the vote totals for all of the ballots that have been inserted into the tabulators by voters. For the BMD, there are no results, since it's simply a mechanism for voters, including voters with disabilities, to make ballot choices and create a paper ballot. For the few jurisdictions, less than 1% of our customer base, an external cellular modem is required. In our case, we specifically designed the modem to be external to allow all poll watchers to easily and readily know whether it is connected. In the counties where it is required, the modem is connected to the tabulator after the polls are closed, after the seals are removed, to transmit unofficial summary results to the jurisdiction's central location. Upon completion of that transmission, the external modem is removed. The ballot box is then unsealed and unlocked, and the paper ballots are removed from the ballot box and manually accounted for by poll officials, including reconciliation with the poll book voter numbers. The seal is removed from the door containing the tabulator's removable memory device. The removable memory device, together with a copy of the results tape and the paper ballots, are sealed in a transport container. That transport container is transported securely by poll officials, sometimes accompanied by sheriffs, to the jurisdiction's central location. As a reminder, none of these actions are performed by Dominion employees. Election administrators at the jurisdiction's central location will accumulate the electronic results, regardless of whether they have been unofficially transmitted through modem or not, from the tabulator's removable memory devices. Accumulation occurs on a closed network computer system. Election night unofficial reports will be generated by the election officials, and canvass process begins to reconcile all election data, and in particular ballot counts and the voter registration poll book numbers, indicating how many voters were processed and how many ballots were counted. After canvass, the jurisdiction certifies the election to the state. Again, throughout this period, The actual paper ballots created by voters are locked and stored under the complete control of local election officials and are available at any time to check against machine tallies. After the election, officials run an even more thorough set of procedures to verify the accuracy of the vote counts, including risk-limiting audits and random recounts conducted by hand within the public view. Above all, the most important check on our machines is the paper ballot. Michigan has paper ballot records for every vote cast on a Dominion machine. The proof of our machine's accuracy is in these paper ballots. If there was any manipulation of the system, the paper ballots simply would not match the machine totals. Moreover, if unauthorized votes were somehow added to the count, those numbers would not match the canvassing numbers. Despite Michigan's rigorous election security protocols, disinformation persists. This has been nowhere more apparent than in Antrim County, where this week a severely flawed report was released by a biased, non-independent organization alleging election switching. It is categorically false and technically incomprehensible, let alone possible, but at its broadest, the report alleges that votes were switched using Dominion's digital adjudication system and ranked choice voting. I have difficulty knowing even where to begin on this. Michigan does not use ranked choice voting. A simple review of Antrim's ballots easily confirms this. More importantly, an independent review by an EAC certified test lab, any of them, could easily verify this. Secondly, none of Antrim's tabulators were connected to the internet. Antrim County does not have modems. They do not use modems. Finally, the adjudication claims are entirely false. Let me take a minute to explain this bizarre claim. First off, adjudication only occurs on absentee ballots and only in states that require it. A voter making a mistake on an absentee ballot is an age-old problem. A common mistake is when a voter fills in the wrong oval and then tries to correct it by filling in another oval and drawing an X or a scribble through the first. This is what election experts call an overvote. In some states, it's considered exactly that and no vote is counted. However, in some states, like Michigan, bipartisan review committees are asked to review these ballots for common mistakes such as the one I just described, to see if they agree on voter intent. All decisions are made by local officials and a bipartisan committee. In some counties, election officials do this using a digital adjudication system, whereas other counties conduct this process manually by creating new ballots when needed. With digital adjudication, the original ballot is never changed, and a full audit trail shows the original image, shows who the bipartisan adjudicators were and what they agreed on, and ultimately captures any changes that they made per state or local law. In Antrim County, ballots were reconciled manually. What the report is alleging is impossible because Antrim County does not license nor do they use digital adjudication. Furthermore, digital adjudication doesn't even work without the use of ballot images. Antrim County did not record absentee ballot images. Any U.S. EAC accredited voting systems testing laboratory can easily and independently verify whether adjudication is or was used at any time. As Michigan's Director of Elections stated in a court filing in response to this report, quote, "The report makes a series of unsupported conclusions, ascribes motives of fraud and obfuscation to processes that are easily explained as routine election procedures or error corrections, and suggests without explanation that elements of election software not used in Michigan are somehow responsible for tabulation or reporting errors that are either non-existent or easily explained," end quote. I should note that isolated incidences of human error do occur in elections. And this is what happened in Antrim County on election day. And this indeed is the reason we're now talking about Antrim County. And it has to do with a series of human errors. Specifically, an October change to the election required a new election project to be created. As part of this process, every tabulator had to be updated with the new election project. The first human error occurred when election officials didn't update all of the tabulator memory cards. The second human error occurred when election officials forgot to conduct the public logic and accuracy testing on the final election project. Both of these errors were compounded when the programmer of this election took specific steps to ensure that the original ballots from the September project that were already printed could be used in the tabulators not affected by the addition of the school board race. If all of the tabulators had been updated as per procedure, there wouldn't have been any error in the unofficial reporting. If public logic and accuracy testing had taken place, the error would have been caught when it should have been caught prior to the election. If steps weren't specifically taken to salvage the already printed ballots, the system would not have allowed election officials to upload memory cards, and the reporting error never would have occurred. Human mistakes happen, especially in busy election years when election officials work tirelessly through weekends and holidays for months on end, which is even more difficult in small counties where there is a lack of dedicated election staff. This year in particular, with the difficulties compounded by the pandemic, this is exactly why Canvas procedures exist, which of course, where this error was quickly identified and corrected. Because our systems in Michigan use paper ballots, the accuracy of the tabulation machines can be proven by hand counts and audits. As the Michigan Secretary of State Office has already announced, this week, the Bureau of Elections in Antrim County will conduct a hand count of all ballots cast in the presidential election. This will verify that our system counted votes accurately. Those making unfounded allegations against Dominion are selective in their expressed concern. For example, they ignore that in several key battleground states, the president got more votes on Dominion systems than in other jurisdictions. Some of the requested recount sites, such as Philadelphia and Milwaukee, were not even Dominion customers at all. I will close by reminding everyone that all Dominion machines in battleground states produce voter verifiable paper ballots and records for review. These paper ballots for every vote cast are preserved and secured by the local election officials and are overseen by representatives from both parties. If there was any manipulation of the system, the paper ballots would not match the machine totals. Moreover, if unauthorized votes were somehow added to the count, those numbers would not match the canvassing numbers. As one example, the recent hand count in Georgia of 5 million votes matched our voting machines tallied perfectly, showing that our machines counted accurately. I was asked recently what I thought about the Georgia hand count, and my reaction is always one of enthusiasm. A hand count is the most certain way of proving that our systems work. We welcome recounts because they prove the value of our systems. This indisputable fact is a key redundancy of our voting process that will undoubtedly continue to serve as the basis for truth and transparency in the 2020 election and beyond. I appreciate the opportunity to testify at this official hearing under oath about our company and how we worked in the 2020 elections. We have yet to see our critics make their allegations under oath, as I'm doing here today, or to bring any real, independent, fact-based evidence forward. Thank you again, and I'm now happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Polis. I'd like to start with some questions regarding the Antrim situation, if I may. And I'd like to have a better understanding of how exactly the error occurred. And so, and what I want to specifically drive at is your statement about how if the logic and, is it error, logic and error test?
Logic inaccuracy test.
Logic and accuracy test. If that had been run, that this would have been caught. And so is it correct to state that the error that occurred in the unofficial results didn't occur at the tabulators, but occurred when the information was taken to the centralized location and uploaded off of the memory cards that were in the tabulators? Is that correct?
Thank you, Chair McBroom. So the first thing that I will say is my information is Dominion did not support Antrim County. We did not program their election. We don't have a copy of their database. We don't have any copies of what happened there. But what I do know, I will walk through. So from my understanding, the county originally signed off, finalized, and tested their programming. And I believe that they did a public logic and accuracy test, but I believe they did it in September after the original programming. Once that was completed, my best guess at this time is that they sent their ballots off to be printed. At some point in October, they were required to add a contest on ballots that I believe affected 3 of their 18 tabulators. I believe it was a school board contest. New programming was provided to the county, along with instructions to update all 18 of their tabulators. This is where the first human error occurred. Antrim is a small county, as you know, in the Upper Peninsula, and election officials forgot to update all of their 18 tabulators' memory cards. This type of human error is mitigated when the counties can afford to arrange for on-site support, for example, but as my understanding was, there wasn't any on-site technical support in Antrim County. This type of human error, I should point out, of election programming happens from time to time, and it's the entire purpose of why we have public logic and accuracy testing, because this process, which is a requirement in states including Michigan, the test entails zeroing every tabulator that's going to be used in an election. Officials in front of public view feed a known test deck of ballots into the tabulator. Once they're done that, they close the poll, they print the results tape, they upload the results into the database, and then they ensure the results that are being reported are in fact the expected results. It's specifically designed to be used in a public forum. So at the conclusion of this process, once it's verified, the tabulators then are re-zeroed, sealed, and made ready for election deployment. So performing that step would have caught the first human mistake, but this step was unfortunately missed, which is the second error. Those two are not even enough, because those two errors, which happened one after another, were compounded by the way the election update was programmed. During the October programming update, the contracting firm used by Antrim took care to program the new tabulation files to allow Antrim to salvage the original ballots that were already printed, except for the ballots affecting the new school board race, which I believe were 3 tabulators. This is the only reason why any memory card that was mistakenly not updated could be uploaded for the unofficial tally.
Thank you. So what I'm trying to get at specifically, Mr. Polis, is how do we verify whether the mistake is made in the programming at the tabulator versus at where the memory cards are taken to? And so, and tell me, during the logic and accuracy, is that done? I mean, I know you run the stack of ballots through and then you print a slip up on the tabulator to make sure that it accurately counted the ballots. But is there a time then when the results are taken from the tabulator to the central location to make sure that that transmittance of the data is also done accurately too?
Best practice involves reviewing the results that are uploaded via the memory cards and comparing them to the results tape that are printed immediately upon polls close. And again, multiple copies posted publicly in the polling location and distributed to any poll watchers. And you verify that the results tape matches what has been uploaded. In this particular case, the first 2 errors happened, and because the system was told to accept memory cards from either one of those 2 projects, it allowed an upload from the September programming, even though it was expecting a memory card from the October programming.
Okay. And does the software that those cards are taken to, at the central location, or if the data is transmitted via modem, the software at the other end that's receiving those data points, is that your software or is that someone else's software?
Yes, the software that resides at the central location is our software.
Okay. And then is it possible for that data to also be transmitted to other types of programming, such as Excel spreadsheets?
So that system is designed as a standalone system, but those results obviously have to be transmitted to a central location at the state level and reported to the media. So there are several ways that election officials can generate results and reports. One of them is Excel, one is through PDF, et cetera, so that the unofficial results can be exported to the state, to the media, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Other members of the committee want to ask questions? I'll share the microphone here. Okay, Vice Chair Lucidо, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Polis. Are you still CEO of Dominion?
I am.
And Dominion stands for what? Is this just a name you gave it, or is there any?
It doesn't stand for anything. It's just a name.
Okay. Dominion Voting Services has been around 18 years. 2002, you opened up in Toronto, Canada.
We were formally incorporated in January 2003 in Toronto, Canada.
You stood there for a couple years and then moved the operations to Denver, Colorado.
We moved our headquarters to Denver in 2010.
You're currently doing business in 28 states that you operate here in the United States?
Correct.
In those 28 states, approximately, well, let me go to this. Let's just deal with Michigan right now. You have about, you have a contract for each and every one of these units that you place in service in these counties in which the votes are taken?
I'm not familiar off the top of my head, but I believe we have a contract with the state, and then we very well may have separate contracts with counties. But I believe our original contract was with the state entity.
So the state of Michigan gave you a contract to go ahead and use, and I'm using your words now, what you said is, we supply machines. We do not run elections. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Those were your words, and the tabulator does the count for the votes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that can be checked by counting, hand counting the paper ballots. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the software that you claim and the supplying of the machines, and this is very technical, and I need to get this so that we can clear up any ambiguity. Did you train individuals on what they're supposed to do when you put these machines or the software in service?
I was not involved, but that's typically what we do. We train county officials on how to use software.
Is there a manual that somebody who has, like, let's say, authority over the individuals that are working for them in the in the clerk's office can reference when there's a need to see how the training goes?
To the best of my knowledge, all of our manuals and user guides were submitted to the state on the original state contract and part of that process, and distributed from the state to the counties. And I know that in many situations, the counties will generate their own user guides and manuals based on our materials.
So that I'm clear, when you enter into an agreement with the state of Michigan to supply your equipment, your machines, and your software, there has to be some kind of way to make sure that they're running the machinery correctly and the software correctly. Would that be fair?
That's correct.
All right. Do you charge a fee in the contract? And I don't really want to know how much it's none of my business, but do you charge a fee for that training?
If there was a fee, it would have been part of the original upfront purchase.
How long ago? I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't give you a chance to finish.
No, and on a county by county basis, counties are free to make their own determinations. Sometimes they get supplemental training either from state officials. Sometimes they get supplemental training as the need presents itself to the counties. That's not really something I'm expert on.
I understand, and I only want to limit your testimony to what you know. If you don't know, I'd like you to, and Mr. Chairman, through the chair, I would like you to give us at least to have your lawyer who's there present with you today, write down what it is that we're looking for so that we can supplement your testimony and get the information from your office. Is that a problem?
Oh, of course.
Thank you. So, because what I'm looking at is I buy something, I want to know how to use it properly so that I don't have it malfunction and or misfire or whatever the case may be. And I'm not real familiar with a tabulator nor the software that runs the same. But if these machines that are supplied to the counties to go ahead and make, or to the communities that are doing these tabulations of the votes, that software is unique to that machine. It's proprietary, right?
The software that resides on our tabulators is proprietary.
Yes.
And that is once we certify at the federal level, that's when we lose control of the software. It is transmitted from the independent certification agencies to the counties, and then it transfers into the county's chain of custody.
Is the memory cards that you put into the machinery, is that locked down that the memory card can't be manipulated and or distorted?
Right. So
if I wanted to get the memory card out of the machine, would that if we had to remove a memory card from the machine, could that be possible?
Sure. You'd have to break the seal during the election. I'm assuming you're asking during the election.
During the election, correct?
Yeah. So as I stated, when the machines are delivered to a polling location, they are the compartments by which the memory cards are inserted into the machine are both locked and sealed. We actually have 3 memory cards, and one of them is designed to be removed at the end of election day. So there is a definitive audit on the source code of the machine, or sorry, not the source code, but part of the log on the tabulator when the tabulator door is open and when the cards are removed. And it is designed that it does not come out of the machine until the polls are closed. The seal is broken by the local poll workers, and the locks are unlocked.
So that we got a correct record, there's 3 memory cards. One is designed to be removed. The other 2, I'm assuming, based on what you're saying, but I don't want to assume anything, are not to be removed.
So one of them is designed not to be removed, and that is internal. And 2 of them are removable, and one of them is designed not to be removed, just in case somebody makes any allegation on the card that was removed, even though it's securely transferred by the local election workers, oftentimes accompanied by a sheriff. There's even, and by the way, they're encrypted and signed. But even on the allegation, you could compare it to the second memory card that is a redundant copy that is designed to be continue to be locked and sealed in the tabulator.
If I tell you that somebody removed a memory card where they shouldn't have, would you have backup software or alarm systems that would go off to report that type of behavior in your proprietary machine and software?
So if an allegation was made that one of the memory cards was removed, and let's just, for the sake of your example, say that none of the poll officials noticed it, or the bipartisan poll watchers noticed it, or any voter noticed it, there would be a record of it. And we also have the other card that's in the machine, and they would be off, and the machine will not let you continue if one of them has been removed.
Do you have any validation or way to validate whether a memory card was removed from these machines? Have you started your validation? I know that there was 3. I was reading some stuff, and it says that you do something before the election process, either your company or the clerk, during the election process, there's something done regarding, and then after the election process. Have you guys started, your company started to do an after-election audit as to what happened and look into what these allegations, because you so eloquently gave your testimony, and I appreciate that, trying to clear up any inconsistencies or ambiguity. Tell me, have you started now at this point, and have you completed your after the election process?
Right. So I will point back to what I mentioned in my opening statement. We do not run elections. We are not accountable for running elections. And as such, we do not run the test before the election, or we do not run the test after election. So every state has its own local rules. And quite often, there will be a public logic and accuracy test done before the election. Many jurisdictions will repeat that test after canvass is completed, and they will do a logic and accuracy test post-election. And then some jurisdictions take it a step further and do exactly what you are talking about, but they don't contract with us to do it. The whole idea is that we shouldn't be the ones doing it. The federal system that was put in place after the 2000 presidential election, with the creation of the EAC as a bipartisan commission that does their own accreditation of separate third-party labs that are accredited. The whole purpose of that is that no voter or stakeholder has to blindly trust any technology provider. So the test that you are asking is part of the local officials process and best done by an EAC accredited lab. I will say we have several customers, especially in light of the baseless allegations that have been levied our way in the recent weeks, that have contracted a variety of these EAC accredited independent test labs to do exactly as you say. And their checks are, there's various number of checks that they perform. And I'm certainly no expert at what they do, but the way I think of it is they are verifying that the software that was run in the election was unchanged, that it is in fact the same certified software. They can run a variety of forensic tools to ensure that what you're describing, if it did happen, they would know it happened. And they do that all independent of us.
How do I know as a voter, Mr. Polis, that I didn't have any irregularity of the software being manipulated? How can I be sure of that?
First, Mega March, Stop the Steal March here in D.C. And since then, it's just skyrocketed and shown that many people still have questions that are not being answered. And the American people deserve to have faith in the system. And the Republicans also deserve to have people that fight for them. And it's disappointing to see Leader McConnell concede the way he did this morning. And it's just not right. I saw people conceding, like Senator James Lankford. He conceded on November 5th. I'm watching CNN. And there's a chyron that reads, GOP senator says he's going to step in if President-elect Biden doesn't receive intel briefings from Trump. Well, first, James, that's a very costly chyron, and you're going to be primaried in 2022, and that's a promise. But it also hurts two great Senate candidates down in Georgia. Right. These people are working hard, and they are fighting for our president. Kelly Loeffler released a statement shortly after Mitch McConnell made his remarks. Kelly Loeffler said, I will always fight for President Trump because he always fights for us. And that needs to be the mindset here in Washington, especially if they want to save these two Senate seats and save the Senate. It's so important. And you have these people up here in Washington that just don't seem to get it, or they want to lose. It's a disgrace what Mitch McConnell said. We need fighters. We need fighters in Washington. Last week we saw 23 attorney generals come together and they say, hey, what's happening in this country is a disgrace. We're going to stand up and do something about it. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court didn't want to get in this fight, but there's a lot of other remedies. As Ali pointed out, that the entire constitutional process has not been exhausted yet, and we will be fighting until every remedy is exhausted. And I still believe that we're going to be successful. We have really brave electors here, 7 contested states now. We are not giving up. We will continue to fight. And I urge every Republican in this state, in this city, what will soon be a state if we lose the Senate, by the way. But in this city, fight for your constituents, or it's going to be a very expensive 2022. I've already talked to many billionaires, which a lot of these senators know that I know, and they are going to spend some big money to fight for our president. It's an absolute travesty that they're not. He fought for 4 years. He's the only reason our party even has a future is because of President Trump. So don't give up on him. He hasn't given up on us. And please, I just hope they change their tune, because we got to keep these Senate races. But I also want to talk about the fact that it's not just the voting that was rigged. This was a rigged election from the start. When we found out that Attorney General Barr knew about Hunter Biden's corruption before the election took place, and he said nothing about it. That's horrible. That's horrible. And now he wants to wait until December 23rd to get out of there. I think he should get the hell out right now. We need somebody in there that's going to investigate the horrible things that are going on in this country, investigate the voter fraud. But we found that out. And then we had the fake news media that said, oh, the vaccine, it's impossible to get the vaccine out before the end of the year. It's impossible, not going to happen. Trump is gaslighting you. And sure enough, we get the vaccine. That had an impact on the election. And now Joe Biden wants to take credit for the vaccine. He's going to be like, oh, I'm going to be the one that distributes it. It's President Trump's vaccine. He got it done. He said it was going to be done before the beginning of the year. And the fake news said he was an idiot, said it wasn't going to happen. And so it was a rigged game from the start. Big tech, the Department of Justice even, which is a shame, and the media. And now Dominion and people in Michigan, the Attorney General in Michigan threatening to arrest these brave people. This is a coup. And we're going to stop it. We're going to fight it. And I urge every Republican to take action and fight. A great guy, Lance Gooden, stepped up big last week, and he got 27 Republicans to sign a letter to President Trump requesting he appoints a special counsel because of the inaction of the Department of Justice. Then we saw Congressman Mike Johnson get 126 members to sign the amicus brief. We are united. If you want to win, you're going to fight for the president, because you don't want to fight the base, you don't want to fight us in 2022, because we're going to come with a lot of money and a lot of energy and a lot of passion. And so if you're in Georgia and you're watching this, just know that Kelly Loeffler is still fighting for you. Mitch McConnell does not speak for her. We got to hold these Senate races, Senate seats in Georgia. But come 2022, if they don't change their tune, if they don't fight for our president, we're going to come after them with everything we got, and we will make sure that the GOP is now the party of Trump. God bless you, and I'm going to introduce these two great people from Michigan who are doing great things for this country. So, here you guys go.
Play this video, actually. What we first want to do is we want to play this video. It's gone viral, and I know that these outlets have responsibly shown it, but we don't know that Fox News or CNN has. And so Marianne and Mashan, before they come up, we're going to play what actually happened to them yesterday, right outside their capital.
For the Capitol Commission, for the Governor's Office, for the Speaker of the House, for the Speaker of the Senate, the Capitol is closed unless you have an office here that conducts business today, or if you are taking part in the Electoral College process. Anybody else is not permitted to come in.
They're electors.
Yeah, the electors are already here. They've been checked in.
Not all of the electors are inside.
Capitol is closed. All 16 electors that we've been advised by the governor's staff that we're going to be here to vote in the Electoral College have been checked in. They're already here.
But the GOP electors, I'm sorry.
I understand.
This is the state police acting on orders of Gretchen Whitmer, the governor who had a veiled threat against our president during this fall. So with that, we're going to invite our Trump Michigan electors.
Hey, thank you so much for having us. Yeah, thank you, Ali, Ed, the Eagles, and just this Stop the Steal. We've been to all the Stop the Steal rallies in Michigan, and thank God that we have people like this willing to stand up and be the voice for people that we feel aren't being heard. My name's Mashan Maddock. This is Marion Sheridan. Mm-hmm. And we are national electors from Michigan. And yesterday, what we did was exercise our constitutional duty And that allows our state legislature to exercise their constitutional duty and further investigate the fraud that voters in Michigan feel has happened. We do not have confidence in elections in Michigan.
Right, we haven't. So we organized, and 16 of us electors got together and cast our vote for President Trump. We tried to get into the Capitol.
Basically what we did is we first got to Lansing with the 16 electors and realized right away that not only had they shut down the Capitol, which we had heard about, but they shut down the House office buildings, the Senate office buildings. They even shut down the parking structures of all of the elected officials. And they did this, they said, under the guise of a threat, a security threat. No. But it ended up being that there were about 10 people with a few signs outside. They were really just trying to stop us. They were trying to stop the Republican electors from convening because according to our state statute, we are supposed to be in the Senate chamber at 2 p.m. Now, that's not the federal constitution, and we followed the federal constitutional laws. We ended up convening a couple blocks away at our Michigan Republican Party headquarters. We held our caucus. We certified our ballots for President Trump, and then as a little battalion in 29 degrees, we marched over to the Capitol. And what you can see is this is a state representative. We were escorted by 5 of our state representatives who support this, and we tried to gain access to the Capitol, and we were denied. We were holding our certified ballots in our hand. We also even just tried to say, will you take these in? Or will you have somebody from the Senate chambers come down and take them in? We did everything we could to try to